And I'm done. For those that don't know, let me bring you up to speed with exactly what's going on out here. The main gallery is a massive mess right now, so don't pay attention to it. This area right here, which I'm already beginning to clear out and detach a lot of stuff, I feel as though I could put this to better use. In fact, I believe I could build an indoor pond that's about 1,000 gallons that'll fill up this corner here. I think it would look absolutely amazing. In order to do so, though, we've got to move these tanks. So the 375 gallon, we're gonna move out here. Now, I decided I'd have to build a new stand because the stand that it's currently on isn't gonna fit through this door, plus the stand that it's currently on is several inches shorter. I needed this taller for a specific reason, and that is because our friend Frank is coming out there as well. He will be going underneath the 375 gallon stand, and as you can see, I've already kind of prepared an area for him. All of this is going to be enclosed in with plywood, etc. I'll explain more on this later. We'll have a latch. We'll probably put a door over here. All plumbing's going to run through this wall into here where I need to build an entirely new filtration room. I'm going to rip everything out of here and build an entirely new filtration room. But of course, the fun doesn't stop there. I'm going to build a new saltwater tank. The tank's going to be 4 feet long, 3 feet front to back, and stand 2 feet tall. It will hold about 180 gallons. In it, we're going to stock the sharks when they hatch, and then eventually we're going to put the lionfish as well as the snowflake eel in here, or perhaps we'll put the snowflake eel and the lionfish in first and let the sharks hatch out in the tank they're already in. We'll build a sump underneath. This looks awesome. But first and foremost, let me show you how I built the aquarium stand's frames. So obviously one of the first things I need to do is determine what materials I'm going to be using to actually build the frame of the aquarium stand, which is going to take the bulk or all of the weight from the aquarium. Here's how I do that. Now, most stands you're going to build are going to be made out of 2x4s like the 100 gallon right here. However, when we get into the bigger and more beefier stands and the much larger aquariums, we need to upgrade the size of the materials. Let me explain. 1,200 pounds in that position. So in each corner we have 2,400 pounds of support. In the new design that we're building, I'm going to have approximately 12,000 pounds of upright support alone, and we're putting 3,112 pounds of water alone on that stand. Then of course I have to calculate the weight of the tank, the weight of the decorations, rocks, etc. And what I'm looking for though is a safety factor of 3. What that means is that the stand can support 3 times the amount of weight I'm going to be putting on it. That might seem a little much, or maybe it's overdone, but this is live weight. That water's moving. It's a liquid in motion weight. It's not like we're just putting something stable on it and it's never going to move. The water's constantly moving, creaking the stand's kind of trying to move, etc. So when determining what materials I need to use, I look for a safety factor of 3 based on the design that I'm using. Only calculating the upright supports. That's not calculating the rest of the supports. This stand could support much more than 12,000 pounds, probably closer to 20,000. But in order to make it easy calculations, I only calculate the upright supports. Of course, once we have all of our materials, we have to cut it all up. And when it comes to an aquarium stand, they're actually pretty simple to build. However, you have to make sure, absolutely sure, your cuts are accurate. And since we're making a lot of repetitive cuts, technically there's only 4 different measurements I have to cut for. Here's how I ensure I get consistent cuts. When building an aquarium stand, you actually have to make a lot of the same cuts. For example, I need a piece that is 33 inches long for my front to back supports. The only catch is I need 18 of them. To save myself some time and to ensure accuracy, all I do is measure the first one out to be the 33 inches that I need, meaning this piece here is going to be 33 inches. I then mark it with a small X. This is going to be my pattern piece. Let me show you what I mean. So, as you can see, my little X right here, not a big deal. Actually, it'll rub off if I really want it to. However, what this means is now this piece, instead of breaking out a pencil and measuring tape every time I need to cut a new piece, instead, I take what I call my pattern piece here, I line it up perfectly, which only usually takes a couple seconds, mark off where the new cut needs to be, put this piece aside as my pattern piece. Usually I'll just lean it up against here. Every time I'm ready to cut another piece, I just grab it. So cut your piece, measure out the next one, line it off, cut your piece. It makes the cutting process a lot faster, a lot less remembering, so you can focus on being safe, and of course, ensures accuracy. If one cut is wrong, then all of them will be exactly wrong, and you can adjust your stand accordingly. But usually if you just measure that first piece right, the rest will be right. The only thing you don't want to do is measure out all your pieces at the same time. For example, you put a line there, then we take it over here, we're going to put another line over here. What we're going to end up doing is not taking into account the width of the blade, and it's taking off about 1/8 of an inch every time, which means your first cut will be right, but your second cut's going to be off. So measure them one at a time. With the wood selected, the wood now cut up, we now need screws to hold it all together, of course. Here's what I use. Now the screws that I'm using for this project are just your basic deck screws. Now to be completely honest, I've used a number of different types of screws with equal success, from everything from drywall screws to wood screws to deck screws to construction screws. And the only real thing that I make sure that I do is that the length of the screw is at least 1.5 times the thickness that you need to drill through. For example, in a 2x6, it's not really 2x6, it's technically 5.5 by 1.5. So I need this screw to go through 1.5 inches of the first board, followed by going into at least halfway into the next board. But I don't want it to pierce all the way through or to go through them exactly, because you will sink these screws a little bit, and if you do that, you're gonna have these little pointed nubs coming up through them all the time, and they're gonna be scraping you, scratching you, cutting you all over the place. Bad news. So for this, I'll use 2.25 or 2.5 inch screws. These are 2.5 inch. Number 6 or number 8 tends to work great for these. Usually the shearing strength, what it takes to actually break one of these in half for a number 8 is around 50 pounds. You need 50 pounds of pressure to snap one of these. And in a typical stand, we use over 100 of them. Okay, now I know that this is a lot to remember. I've shown you how to build aquariums, filters, and just about anything for the aquarium hobby. And even me, it's difficult to remember everything and every step and all the rules and calculations, etc. And that's why I wrote my book, The Ultimate Do-It-Yourself Handbook. As you can see, this is my copy. It's all worn out because it's the most used book that I use as well. I'll leave a link in the description if you don't have it yet, so you can get your copy. Ships worldwide. Now, of course, we can finally put it all together. You're probably wondering, wait a minute, how do I calculate the cuts? What are the measurements, etc.? We're going to get to that. First things first, you guys know that the 375-gallon tank is 8 feet long and 3 feet wide, or 96 inches by 36 inches. So what I plan on doing at first, and this is the easiest cuts because I don't have to cut them, is I buy my lumber in 8-foot dimensions. You can get it in 10, 12, etc. But I bought them in 8 foot because there's a lot of pieces I won't have to cut because of it. Well, not a lot, there's 4. The first thing I'm going to do is measure out the base of the aquarium. Just like this. So now I have a bottom frame that is 8 feet long by 36 inches wide. Now, if you've never built a stand before, I suggest going an inch longer and wider just to give your aquarium a little bit of play on top of the tank, giving you a 1/2 inch lip all the way around. Unless you want it to be flush, then you can build it to the exact dimensions. This outer piece has to be the length of your aquarium. The inside piece is not the length of your aquarium because we have to calculate the thicknesses of the 2 outside rails. So if my tank is 36 inches wide, I got to make this 33 inches long. Why? Each one of these is 1.5 inches thick, meaning if I calculate the 2 of them, that's 3 inches that are going to add to the length. A 33-inch inside plus a 3-inch outside gives me 36 inches wide. Pretty simple. I need to put this together and put it together twice, giving me a top as well as a bottom frame. How many screws you need? I tend to only put 2 in each corner. This doesn't seem like a whole lot, but we're going to be putting a heck of a lot more screws in it here eventually. Now, believe it or not, this is the single most important aspect of the entire build. It's also the least amount of work. However, if these bottom and top frames are not square, the entire aquarium stand will not be. So I've shown how to use corner jigs and squares in the past. So I would highly suggest you use those if you've never been into cutting up wood and making square things with it. However, for me, a lot of the times I just go by feel. I've done this so many times that it's pretty accurate for me. I get it right every time. With the top and bottom frame now completed, I've also ensured that it's all completely lined up. Now, it's going to start to come together and start to look like a stand really quickly. These are what I call the guides. I wanted my stand to be 42 inches tall. So in order for me to ensure it's 42 inches tall, I use these guides, which is also going to act as anchors for the actual support system. But these guides I cut to the length that I want the aquarium's height to be at. So I want the tank to be, or the stand to be 42 inches tall. I cut these to actually be about 41 inches long. I'll explain why here in a moment. I drill them into the aquarium sideways into the frames. 2 in the back of it, and then 2 screws into the side of it. Now comes a bit of a tricky part. Now that we have our guides in place, we've only actually secured them to the bottom frame. I do this way because it makes it kind of easier to simply flip the whole thing over and lower the bottom frame. Now it will be a tight squeeze because these are accurate measurements, but it might just come slamming down here in a second. Just like that. So like I said, these are the guides. Now here's why I tend to make them about 1 inch shorter than I want to. I allow myself a bit of a lift all the way around. See, when I'm actually securing them to the sides, I slightly lift up on the framing so that these don't come poking out. Just because if the ground's unlevel or maybe one of your cuts is off, you don't want these poking out. So being only guides, they're not going to need to be exact. You could probably be off by a couple of inches, really. But if I were to go ahead and screw them as is and continue to lift up, I'm going to have an all wobbly stand. I can't make it that accurate. So that's when we take our actual supports. Now these are cut to the dimensions of the entire height of the tank minus the top and bottom frame. Again, 5.5 inches, 5.5 inches, meaning this is 11 inches. I want this to be 42 inches tall. So these need to be 31 inches long. And what these do is go just like that. Now the weight that's going on here, these take the weight of the actual aquarium. We're not putting it on the screws. That's dangerous. But the reason why we put them in now, we're just putting them in loosely, is so that it is accurately put together. Now notice that this support is in line with the guide. We still have to follow up by putting some side braces in there. We'll show that in a minute. But I'm going to make sure that all of these are perfectly supported by the actual support system and not by the screws that might be messing things up. So now that I know the weight of the stand is going to be distributed onto these support systems, you'll see all the way around here that there's about, a 1/2 inch or 1 inch of this board being lifted up. Again, they're only guides, but that's why I make them shorter for these 2 reasons. 1, it ensures the weight is actually put on the support system. And of course, 2, that we don't have boards that were cut even 1/4 inch too long that are now going to jut out and, cause some stresses on the actual aquarium, which will eventually crack it. So now the most important aspects of the entire build are done. We made sure that the top and bottom frame were square, and we ensured that the support systems are actually supporting the weight of the tank. Now I'm going to flip it back up to the other side, which you don't have to do, but that's the other side is flatter and truer than this side. So I'm going to flip it over And the rest is super simple. Everything will install really easily because all of the cuts are identical to what's already on here. They'll just slide in, we screw them in place, and that'll be it. Now we can continue on with bracing the tank, and this is pretty important of how we're going to overlap these. If you follow this exactly as I just done it, this piece, this last support system piece, nice tight squeeze, I love that, is going to overlap this top of the frame and this top of the frame, meaning this corner joint is actually supported on both sides by the same piece of wood. What that means is if, say, the screws or something let go on one side, it's not going to drop down, it's still going to be supported by this frame, and everything on top is still going to stay lined up. Now when it comes to screws, I'll put 3 in so it lines up and screws into this brace, and then a couple to go into the guide. And then of course, some front to back braces. Don't worry if your stand is going together tight like mine is. That's a good sign that your cuts are pretty much exact. These serve 2 purposes. 1, it prevents the bowing and the pulling out of the tank. 2, and of course some twisting, but the most important is it's going to support the weight down the center as well. For this one here, I like to put a couple screws into the actual guide, as well as through the front and back. Now how many you need is going to depend on the dimensions of your aquarium, but usually I like to have them every 8 to 12 inches. I'm also putting a plywood top on this, so that's also going to help with that. But usually every 8 to 12 inches, sometimes every 16 inches. Truly depends on the dimensions and the type of aquarium. I'm putting an acrylic aquarium on this, meaning it doesn't have a bottom trim. All of the weight is going to be evenly dispersed, and if I don't have anything in the middle, it's going to bow and eventually snap. But there are some glass aquariums that have a trim on it, and it has a lip underneath the trim. These, you can just make sure that you've supported the outside perimeter, and you don't need as many cross braces. Then you only need one maybe every 12 to 18 inches, but for an acrylic tank like I'm putting on it, I definitely want it every 12 inches or so. Maybe even 8 inches. But these are 2x6s, they can support a tremendous amount of weight. I'm only going to put them every 12 inches. Okay, so I completed adding in all of the braces. All of these side braces, front to back, are spaced by about every 10 inches or so. The only unique thing about this is down below. You can see that I've left a 48.5-inch gap here for Frank's tank to slide into. Now I know that this is just going to look really weird at first, but let me finish the stand. I still have to wrap it in plywood. We'll paint it or stain it. Frank's tank is going to be encased and look like it's a part of this tank. It's going to look absolutely phenomenal. The other thing that we added is 2 more upright supports to support the 8-foot long run. Whenever a tank is longer than, say, 4 feet, you definitely want to start considering putting in some center bracing like this one. See what I meant? Well, we're going to have a bit of a runway here. This is going to run 8 foot, of course, and this tank's going to cut off with the door there. It's going to look pretty cool in my opinion. Plus, these tanks are going to be mostly eye level. However, you're probably wondering, how's this door going to open? I measured everything precisely so that the doorknob actually, if I left this open, can go through it. Of course, it will be wrapped in plywood, but it will still open to 90 degrees, which is more than enough that I know. Oh, I should also mention that the stand, when the tank is on the stand, it's going to look like it's covering the window. I'm not going to be able to access it. The tank is actually going to be out several inches from the wall, approximately 8 inches. So I'm going to still be able to get in here and open the window up if I need to. Plus it's almost perfectly lined up with the window here, so I think it's going to look uniform, leaving me some space to put video equipment and whatnot here. And done this one too. Same basic design. We have our top frame, that's the dimensions of the actual aquarium. We have our 2 support systems here. We have our guide, we have our cross beams, These are about 10 inches apart, just like over on this stand. The bottom, I didn't need to brace it nearly as much, and I don't need a center brace. In fact, I could have built this out of 2x4s like I did the last one, but I already had a bunch of these spare, so I just went ahead and built it. But now we're getting a much better idea. Look at the height difference. Identical in height. Door still opens, of course. I'm going to move the controller for the air exchanger up way more. I installed that, so I know exactly where the wiring is and all that. However, when you walk through the front doors here, now you get a better idea. This is the door to the actual gallery, and this is going to be the fish room. Of course, we still need to wrap the stands. Once I get some plywood and whatnot, I'm going to run plumbing and filtration into this room. I'm going to revamp the entire filtration room. But everything, I still got a lot to do in there too. But everything's looking a lot better. I moved my mini fridge over here. You guys know that I put my frozen foods in the freezer portion that I make, and then down low, I stock that with a ton of beef. I guess that doesn't matter. I need to install my security system camera here, but I also gave myself lots of storage for camera equipment, making it easier to charge batteries and have all my cameras ready to go and easily accessible. Now this, of course, is the most trafficked room in the entire gallery. In order to get anywhere, I gotta go get in here through the entrance and of course go through the door to the gallery. So Frank's gonna be seeing a lot more of me. We'll be seeing a lot more of Frank, and he's gonna look awesome in this stand. But yeah, I love it so far. A little bit tired though. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and if you're excited to see everything continue to transpire out here, of course it's not going to be video after video of me building out here. Some things are going to take longer than others. I still got to build the tank up here, move the 375. This is lots of work. But if you're excited to see that, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of those videos.